Oh. All right. What the So, you've been following the ketogenic diet for a little while now to what you believe is like pretty precise and to a T, but you're just not seeing the results that you want to see on the scale specifically. And there could be a multitude of reasons why. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why you might not be losing weight on a ketogenic diet. One of the things we need to remember is that the body loves to adapt. You know, adaptation is actually one of the best things a human does. Maybe not so much emotionally, but physically for sure. Anytime we change diet or environmental stress or anything specific like that, our body goes into survival mode. It wants to adapt to its surroundings and it wants to keep living preferably the way that it's been living. You know, after all, fat cells, for example, are designed to hold onto fat as stored energy to use for heat, for hormone balance, all sorts of things. And that actually brings us into number one, is that you may not have hit your whoosh. Now, if you've heard of the whoosh effect before, I might blow your mind a little bit, maybe not, but I want to explain that the whoosh, by the internet definition, is not actually real. It's not a thing in the way that it's worded. So you might have seen some graphics that go through talking about the whoosh effect, and they make it seem like fat cells just fill up full of water and actually expand, and that's why you might not be losing weight, is because you're technically losing fat, but your fat cells have replaced themselves with water, and that's just not how science works. Fat cells do not actually just absorb a bunch of water and nothing else and then later expel it. But there is some kind of whoosh effect that can actually happen. So nearly every metabolic function, any physiological function in our body requires water in order to perform itself. When we're on a ketogenic diet, we are depleting our glycogen stores, which comes from the carbohydrates, and the glycogen really likes to hold on to water. So when you initially start to lose weight, whether you're super heavy or just kind of have an extra few pounds, and you start to see that you're losing weight pretty quickly, a lot of that is water weight. Not to say that it's water stored in a fat cell, but that it's water that is being used as a metabolic function and as a way to make all these things process the way they need to process. Also, in a ketogenic diet, when we're depleting our glycogen stores, we're also going to be depleting water with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're peeing it out, it just means that it is being used internally. That being said, if you've only followed the diet for a week or a few weeks or so, and you're not seeing the results that you want yet, you think it's going to be a super speedy process, keep in mind you might just not have depleted all of your glycogen stores yet, and your body might be holding onto some water, so that whoosh effect may be coming up. Number two, you're not tracking. Now, this is a big debate, big argument that I hear all the time when people say on a ketogenic diet you don't need to track. You don't need to track your calories, your macronutrients, etc. You don't need to. Absolutely, you don't need to. However, it does help. If you're starting out on a ketogenic diet and you know, well, it's high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrates, really with any diet, if you know the general idea of it, but you're not tracking, you don't really know where you're at. So you might be saying to yourself, well, I'm eating this type of food, but how many calories are you actually eating? How many, especially on a ketogenic diet, how much percentage of fat are you eating? How many carbohydrates are you actually eating? If you don't track, you don't know. And the problem with that is if you're stalling, if you're not seeing the results that you want, if you're not seeing the weight loss you want, you don't know what you might need to change because you haven't been tracking. Now, I'm not saying that you need to track forever and ever. There are plenty of people who do a lazy keto where you just don't track what you're eating, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're one of the people who is stalling or not seeing the results and you're not tracking, start tracking, even if it's only temporarily. That way you can look and see, wow, you know what? I'm having too many calories, or maybe I'm having too few calories. Both of those can have negative effects on our weight loss. Maybe I'm having too much fat, maybe I'm not having enough fat, etc. That actually brings us into the next point. Eating too much fat. On a ketogenic diet, yes, you're supposed to have a high percentage of your calories coming from fat because that is your fuel source on a ketogenic diet. That does not mean eat an absurd amount of fat. That doesn't mean add bacon and butter to every dang thing that you make, right? Fat is your fuel source, and if the goal is weight loss, then you're already going to have some of the fat stored in your body. Now, I will say, physiologically speaking, The body fat and dietary fat are different things because one is dietary, one has already been converted, stored as energy, etc. They are different, but if your body's depleted of glycogen, it's going to use fat as its energy. It will take some of the fat that's stored and convert those to ketones to use as energy. So if you're doing this for weight loss, you really don't want to be eating an absurd amount of fat. A lot of people who start on a ketogenic diet do about somewhere between 60 to 75% of their calories coming from fat. If your goal is weight loss, if you're brand new, you're seeing a stall, you're not seeing the weight loss you want, check to see about how much fat you're eating, and if you're closer to that 75% range, dial it back a little bit. A lot of times that can just initiate this weight loss coming from the fat internally being burned. Now, number 4 is the flip side to that. You're not eating enough fat. So, kind of similar concept. If you're saying to yourself, well, I'm just going to eat a lot of protein. Like keto to me just means meat, or you're going to do more of a carnivore style ketogenic diet. We want to remember that protein is good to have on a ketogenic diet. Too much protein is not necessarily the best thing. You still want to have the majority of your calories coming from fat. Protein is full of amino acids. Most amino acids are what's called glucogenic, meaning that they convert into glucose. The whole point of a ketogenic diet is to deplete your body of your glycogen, which comes from glucose. Granted, you really do have to eat a lot of protein, and at certain times for that to really be glucogenic and to turn into anything that might negatively impact you. Typically, the small amount of the amino acids and you're eating them for your meals is not going to affect and spike insulin and all this stuff. But again, if you're stalling, if you're not losing weight, you track and realize, wow, I'm having a lot more protein than I'm having fat. Swap that around, give that a try. Number 5, you're not exercising. Now, this is again one of those debates where I see all the time people are posting stuff like, can I do a ketogenic diet without exercising? The simple answer is absolutely, of course you can. You can do any diet without exercising, and you can still have great results without exercising. If your goal is overall health, and this is going to be a lifestyle change for you, I don't know why you wouldn't want to exercise. I think part of the reason comes from that when people hear the word exercise, they're thinking, weightlifting, running marathons, doing CrossFit. Like, they're thinking really intense stuff. Exercise is just anything that gets you physical, let your mind wander where it wants to. But anything that you can do to get up off the couch, out of the bed, etc. It could be just a walk around the block, taking your dog for a walk, doing some laps around the pool. Anything physical like that is going to get your metabolism revved up, using those nutrients the way they're meant to be used, improving your heart and lungs. Exercise doesn't have to be a competitive sport. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy hard. But doing something physical a couple times a week, especially if you're having a stall on weight loss, is going to make a pretty big difference both in the weight loss and your overall health. Number 6, you need to try fasting. Now, fasting and keto are not necessarily synonymous. You don't have to fast in order to do a ketogenic diet. You don't have to be on a ketogenic diet in order to do fasting. But if you're noticing a stall, especially if it's been a pretty long stall, you're not losing any kind of weight, try intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting.
Typically, the most common one is 16-8, means that you're eating for 8 hours of the day, the rest of the 16 hours you're fasting. Most people will start their 16 hours towards the evening time, so about 8 of those hours they're sleeping. Here is, you're not just skipping a meal. You're doing this for a reason, right? So you have 16 hours that you don't eat. You have 8 hours that you eat all of your normal calories that you would eat, whether you were eating for the whole day or just those 8 hours. It's really not that bad when you get used to it. The benefit of fasting is that it helps use up your glycogen stores. Fasting makes ketosis easier because when we don't have the glycogen stores, we're going to create the ketones from that. It actually goes through a process which is called autophagy, which is cell recycling. So any damaged cells or not properly working cells or damaged proteins, it helps convert those and recycle them and essentially destroy them and make them brand new, which can help with your overall goals, health goals, and that can turn into weight loss goals. Now, if you're brand new to keto and you just started, probably say don't worry about fasting just yet, because that's one more discipline that you have to try to teach yourself to get used to. If you're brand new to keto, start with just learning the concepts of what types of foods to eat, and then later, after a month or so, if you're seeing a stall, try intermittent fasting. So these are just some quick tips as far as why you might not be losing weight on a keto diet and things you can do to help improve that. Are there any that I missed or any ones that you could think of that you would want to add to this list? If so, comment down below. Do me a huge favor, like this video, and please subscribe. It helps me out way more than you can ever imagine. I appreciate you guys coming back to this channel, and as always, initiate, dedicate, decimate.